What amazes me is how humble you are about this. It's so fantastic too. So it's open source. So thanks so much for making it open source, and thank you for being so humble about this, because some people are perhaps not when they create such an amazing product. So really appreciate it. So tell us about why like Sharkfest. Is it something that happens like in the US? Does it happen in Europe? I'm assuming it's like a conference.
It's much smaller, but that's a good thing. I mean, it's much more intimate. And at the very beginning of each conference, I encourage people to talk to each other. It's much more familial. And Chris can probably talk about this too. He's at every Sharkfest.
Just to start off, okay, imposter syndrome to the hilt here. I've got Gerald Combs on my, we're talking about me knowing Wireshark and the man sitting right here.
Hey everyone, it's David Bombal back with two really, really special guests. Chris, we've had you on the channel before. Great to have you back again. But Gerald, you're going to be the star of the show today. You got to tell us, who you are and what makes you so famous, because it's fantastic to actually be talking with you directly.
Hey, I'm Gerald Combs. I'm the original author of a tool called Wireshark.
I think a lot of people know what Wireshark is. Used in ethical hacking, used in pen testing, used in networking. Chris, you're a whiz at this software. But Gerald, you got to tell us the story, man. Why did you create Wireshark? Like, take us on this journey. And I believe it had a different name before, and then something happened, and then the name changed to Wireshark. So perhaps you can just give us a bit of history, of how we ended up where we are today.
Sure. Many years ago, I was attending school and working at the same university. I was studying computer science, but at the same time, I was working at that university in the computing services department. And back then, if you wanted to analyze the network, which was part of my job, you had to use a tool called a sniffer. In our case, it was this heavy box made by a company called Network General, and it was an amazing product, especially for its time. But I would lug it around campus, plug it in, and that's how I and analyze the network, and that's how I kind of got my start in the industry. But after the university, I went to work for a small ISP, and the ISP just didn't have a budget for a sniffer. I mean, these things cost about as much as a luxury car. So I had a fresh computer science degree. I thought, well, okay, fine. I can write my own analyzer. I mean, I needed to, we didn't have, like I said, we didn't have a sniffer, and I needed to support all of our clients at this ISP. And that included companies like the Kansas City Chiefs, Apple, AT&T. I mean, we're a small ISP with really big clients. And so I just sat down and wrote this minimum viable protocol analyzer, and I named it Ethereal. And I released it as open source because it just seemed like a good idea at the time. I'd used a lot of open source software at the time, and it seemed like a good way to give back to the community. And after that first release, I immediately started getting contributions from around the world, from all these developers around the world. And keeping up with that development team has been my job ever since. I mean, I say that I'm the original author or the creator of Wireshark, but there are so many other people that have contributed to this project. I'm by no means the only author. Yeah, I think we've gotten contributions from about 2,300 people so far. So, it's been very, we've been very lucky. I'll just say that to have gotten all these contributions.
What amazes me is how humble you are about this. It's so fantastic too. So it's open source. So thanks so much for making it open source, and thank you for being so humble about this, because some people are perhaps not when they create such an amazing product. So, really appreciate it.
You did mention that we released it under a different name, under the name Ethereal. And I have a prop. I have the original server.
Wow.
I'll make it the star of the show here for a minute. This is a Sun Spark Station IPX that I picked up off of eBay. When I first started the project, there were no hosting services like GitHub or GitLab, and I had to do everything myself. And so I bought that box, installed a bunch of software on it, and traded consulting time with friends who worked at ISPs around the town just to get it online. And invariably, I would I get it parked somewhere, and I get a call from one of my friends and say, look, we're being acquired. We're doing inventory tonight, and your box cannot show up on inventory. So I had to go run and get the box and move it to a different ISP in town. Different people at different ISPs. And so there's at least once or twice I had to move that box literally under the cover of darkness just to a different ISP.
That's hilarious.
But yeah, and initially, things were kind of sketchy at that level, but that wasn't going to work. So I asked my boss if we could just park the box there, and he agreed. And that's kind of how we arrived at our first business model, which was to basically have my employer host the project. And that's how the project kind of progressed from probably 2000 to 2023. The name changed from Ethereal to Wireshark. That happened because basically Windows XP was terrible at capturing wireless packets. Yeah, I mentioned early on that we got all these contributions from developers. And one of the big things that grew our user community was the fact that we ported Ethereal over to run on Windows. When I first wrote the software, the only platforms I used were Linux and Solaris. And so that's what I supported. And there are these grad students in Italy, Loris Dejoani and Gianluca Vreni, who wrote this little capture driver called PCAP, which let you capture on Windows. And a couple of our developers ported Ethereal over to Windows. And suddenly we had this huge user community back in the early 2000s, or the early aughts, I should say. And around that same time, 802.11 came on the scene. And you two can probably remember 802.11 early on was not at all reliable, and it was not at all secure. And so people needed to analyze this stuff. And so, we started getting all these support requests from people who were running Windows XP at the time. That was the dominant operating system. And they wanted to analyze wireless packets, and they couldn't. And the reason was because when you installed Ethereal on Windows and you fired up a capture on your wireless adapter, the exact opposite of what you wanted to have happen was basically the wireless adapter shut down. And that was just because of the driver software. And so I sent an email to the PCAP guys, and by that time they had started a company, a little bit of foreshadowing, here in Davis, California. And I said, can we solve this? And we exchanged some emails, and Lori said, well, yeah, we can take an off-the-shelf adapter and write a special driver for it. And they offered me they offered me a job. And so I moved with my family halfway across the country here to Davis, California. And we created this product called PCAP, which let you capture wireless packets on Windows at the time. And it turned out to be a really pretty good success. We ended up hiring a business development director named Janice, and she pointed out that, you have this huge user community, and maybe you should start up a conference called, and we ended up calling it Sharkfest. The reason we changed the name from Ethereal to Wireshark is because when I moved from Kansas City to Davis, I had to leave the name Ethereal behind because my employer at the time owned the trademark.
Yeah.
And we went back and forth and came up with a list of candidate names, and I showed them to my wife, and she picked Wireshark. And that's how we have Wireshark.
When did you say you created Wireshark or Ethereal, the first version?
I started working on it probably late 97. The first official release was in July 1998.
Wow. It's been going for a long time. So
a very long time.
I'm trying to remember now. You can correct me if I'm wrong. I remember Riverbed was the sponsor or the owner or something. Wireshark was part of that. But these days, I believe it's a foundation. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mentioned early on that our business model for a long time was whoever employed me was the primary sponsor of the project. And that went from a company called Network Integration Services to Case Technologies, where we made our PCAP and started Sharkfest. And, Case was so successful that Riverbed, the company they pointed out, acquired us. And they were the sponsor for a very long time. Then later on, I moved to a company called Sysdig. But throughout that whole time, that was very convenient. I mean, it's great to have this company backing your open source project. Most open source projects don't have that, and this is a very rare and wonderful thing. But at the same time, that means at least in our case, it meant we had a couple of single points of failure. One of them was our corporate sponsor. If any of those companies had decided to pivot and say, okay, we're not in the network analysis business anymore, we would have been in dire straits. The other single point of failure was me. Invariably, I was the only one in each of those cases who was doing day-to-day development on Wireshark and who could do things on behalf of the project legally, from basically an official perspective. And so we looked around for different options to kind of remedy this, because we're networking people. If you see a single point of failure, what do you do?
Yeah,
you
exactly. Yep.
And so we went back and forth. We looked at a couple of solutions like joining an umbrella organization. If you're not familiar with that, those are organizations like the Linux Foundation and the Software Freedom Conservancy and Apache Software Foundation. But we kind of already had our own structure, and that so it wasn't a good fit to move that in. So we just basically formed an organization around what we have now. We incorporated as a public benefit corporation here in California and applied for nonprofit status with the IRS, and they granted that. And so now we're an official not-for-profit called the Wireshark Foundation. And our job basically is to educate people about networks and support the Wireshark project and help people keep their networks fast, reliable, and secure.
I love that. I mean, it's open source, non-profit. But the big question always, in the past, you had like Riverbed and other companies that were, paying your salary and paying for development, I'm assuming. But I mean, how does Wireshark make money now? Because do people have to contribute on the website, or, how do you keep the lights on? Because I'm assuming, what you still have to eat, and, the developers have to be compensated for the work they do.
Well, I guess to be clear, I'm still employed by Sysdig. I mean, they pay me to do my day job, which is to work on Wireshark and support it, and to work on a related project called Stratoshark. But that's a whole different discussion. But if you want to support the Wireshark Foundation, there are a couple of ways. One is you can make an individual donation. We have a donation page set up where you can do that. But the thing that really helps the project and really helps us, and forecasting and budgeting is basically to get your employer to become a member sponsor. And we do have several companies who are doing that now. And if you want to learn more about doing that, the best way to do that is to get in touch with our executive director, Sherry Najafi, and she'll take you through all that. But yeah, we try to set up as many ways to support the foundation as we can.
So a great way to support the foundation is you could do individual contributions, but get other companies to help sponsor the organization so that it can keep going, right?
Yeah, and we also have a conference called Sharkfest. And if you have a bunch of people that use Wireshark at your company, that's a great way to learn how to use it more effectively and to see how other people use it.
So tell us about why, Sharkfest. Is it something that happens in the US? Does it happen in Europe? I'm assuming it's like a conference. The one that I, perhaps can think of that's well known as Cisco Live or like Black Hat. Is it a similar kind of situation like that?
It's much smaller, but that's a good thing. I mean, it's much more intimate. And at the very beginning of each conference, I encourage people to talk to each other. It's much more familial. And Chris can probably talk about this too. He's at every Sharkfest. But yeah, we have an event in the US and in Europe each year. In the fall, we're having an event in Warsaw.
Okay, so that's fantastic. If I went to Sharkfest, are there classes? I'm assuming someone like Chris perhaps runs, teaches, or other guys teach. Can I meet you? Can I meet the developers? What's the benefit of going?
Since you bring it up, yeah, Chris puts on a very good pre-conference class. The format of the conference is that we have, before each conference we have pre-conference classes, so that if you're kind of new to the industry, you can get up to speed so you can get the most out of the regular conference classes. And, the regular conference classes cover a whole bunch of different topics from, development to just straight up analysis to, encryption to and security to all sorts of other things. We try to keep the audience as engaged as possible. We have evening events where we have, competitions of various sorts. Sometimes it's an escape room or a packet challenge, or I think the last European conference we had more of a game show type competition, but and they're always fun. But the goal there is to like I said, keep you engaged and to keep your help you improve your skills. And as you mentioned, maybe meeting the developers, and this is a good way to do that. One of the things I love about Sharkfest is that the goal, at least initially, was to, and still is, to bring all the developers together so we can meet face to face, which really does benefit the application itself. It helps us improve the quality of the application. And the fact that the developers are all there meeting the community means that we get to see how the community uses the product, which is invaluable, and making sure that it's, that whatever workflows you have in front of you work more effectively, and we can support you in that.
No, I mean, I think it's just, it's so nice to meet people who've done these things. I mean, Wireshark is an application that so many people use, and I think it's important that people are reminded that one of the problems with open source projects is the funding thereof, because stuff doesn't just magically happen. Someone's got to run the thing, someone's got to write the code, etc., and improve it. So Sharkfest contributes to the foundation as well, right?
Yeah. I mean, the conferences mostly pay for themselves. We might make a little bit of profit, but we try to keep those kind of budget neutral. But yeah, they do help out. I mean, and that's one of the ways that we support our community.
Gerald, how do I register for Sharkfest? Is it, again, just on the Wireshark website? Where do I go if I want to register and find out about pricing, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, the main site is at sharkfest.wireshark.org, and you can register for the US event and for the European event.
So, Gerald, I've got to ask this question. A lot of people watching are not at, say, Chris's level. Chris is like the genius Wireshark user that I like to talk to when I want to, how stuff works like in the real world. Do I have to have that level of skill? But what happens if I'm just a beginner, or I'm not quite sure of all the details? Can I go to Sharkfest, or do I need to be at a certain level before I come?
We try to make the conference as accessible as possible. We have tracks for beginners, intermediate users, and experts. And if you're a developer as well, I mean, this would be invaluable because the development team is there at the time. Yeah, if you're a developer, this is the place to be, because you can talk with the other Wireshark developers, with the core development team. And if you have any questions, if you're trying to enhance Wireshark, this is a good way to be more effective at that.
So, Chris, I got to ask you, man, you've been quiet. You train, is it a what's the right term? Is it like a pre-course before the event starts? And what's your experience? Because you're always going to this. So I'm assuming you've got you're not a developer, but you're a very big user of Wireshark, and you teach. What's sort of your feedback about Sharkfest?
Well, for sure. Just to start off, okay, imposter syndrome to the hilt here. I've got Gerald Combs on my, we're talking about me knowing Wireshark and the man sitting right here, which actually is how I felt at the first Sharkfest I went to, and Gerald walks by and I'm just like, whoa, and then later on I was like, whoa, this guy's actually super cool. And he sat down and talked to me and didn't make me feel stupid and made me feel like I had something to contribute to. And him and his team and all the developers were that way. And I was like, wow, it's they're not just some elitist team that's going to make you feel small. Like they're friends and want you to be successful. And imposter syndrome, huge back in the day when I started presenting, and Gerald comes and sits in the back row of my training, and I'm like, here, I have the inventor of Wireshark in a course where I'm teaching about Wireshark. And I was still getting my legs under me, so to speak, from a packet perspective. But I think what's so cool about that community, it's wherever you're starting, wherever you're at, the goal is to help you get better. So to your question, David, wherever you're starting is accepted. It doesn't matter. We could label that anything: beginner, novice, rookie, newbie. But how about just you're at a point with Wireshark that you want to improve? I'm at a point with Wireshark that I want to improve. So we all do our best to embrace that and help all different types of people and skill levels. Part of the reason why I do that pre-conference course, and it's been different educators have come on to help out with that over the years, is to get people that are new prepped and ready for what's to follow. Give you the top things, top skills you're going to need with Wireshark, and start at a beginning level, so that then the ensuing conference that you attend, you can maximize that experience and absorb more from whatever sessions you choose.
But I love that it's small, because the problem when you go to some of these big conferences, it's so big, and the people that are like Gerald, untouchable. So it's really nice that it's small and that you can interact with, everyone.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that you can have lunch with Gerald and the different developers and ask about different use cases. And it could be something very simple. And sometimes, David, you could walk in and say, hey, how can I improve this filter? And you're literally talking to the guy that wrote the thing.
Yeah.
And he'll give you a new way. I've learned a lot of little tips at Sharkfest, because I'm sitting here watching a presenter and they might do just the smallest little thing. It's just a navigation. How they get there is different from how I get there. And I learn like, whoa, that was faster. And I like that flow better. So we're all always helping to refine each other. And at Sharkfest too, a lot of times the instructor of one session sits right down, becomes a student for the next instructor to follow. So it's great.
One of the quotes I love about Sharkfest, somebody pointed out years ago, is that it's one of the few conferences where speakers go to see each other's sessions.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Well, we've also seen a shift in the attendee over the years. It used to be very network centric, network heavy, network techs, network engineers. But over time, now, when I ask questions at the start, like who's from different silos within IT, now you're much more on cybersecurity, much more on development side, cloud people in the room. So now it's kind of like, Gerald did an amazing job of this tool that can be adapted to so many different things and so many different protocols. So now we're getting people from all those different backgrounds.
You're talking about like analyzing. I believe you got to. I haven't been, so I've got to come to one of these conferences. But I believe you have this thing where people can bring PCAPs and like you guys go through them. Is that kind of right? So if I've got like this crazy problem and I bring my PCAP, could like someone look at it?
One of the sessions, and I'm not sure who started it, but whoever did was a genius. We have a session called Packet Doctors. The thing to note is, one, it's not recorded. So if you want to see it, you have to be there. But basically people can bring in packet captures and, we have, 2 or 3 or 4 of our best analysts on stage. They wear, the white doctor jacket and, we take it as far as we can. And they will, load up the PCAP and they will talk through their workflow. They'll talk through the way they analyze this file, and you can see exactly what they're thinking, exactly how they're working with this capture. Maybe they solve the problem, maybe they don't, but either way, you can see into their, see how their mind is working and how they're analyzing this file.
I love that because like one of the greatest things about having Chris on the show is that just to watch Chris's mind work through a problem. You can learn so much, like you said, just watching an expert, in their craft.
Well, to that point, David, and Gerald, cut me off if you need to, but David, to that point, even what I share here on your channel, a lot of times I spend time with it ahead of time. So I know where I'm leading you. But with Packet Doctors, and it's terrifying when you're a doctor at first, because you're just like, I got to solve this problem. But like Gerald said, like the pressure's off. It's more about how did you get there? And what do you do? What is a Packet Doctor? You get 5 minutes. Here's a PCAP you've never seen in front of a live studio audience, go, like no pressure. It's great. We have a good time and we, doctors support one another. I've been a proctor of it as well and, guided the doctors through, which is a lot of fun, but just helping people see where do you start? And that can be sometimes the hardest step in a mountain of packets. So, and each person brings something different to the table because there's different ways and different things they see. So it's a real special part of Sharkfest.
Yeah. When you boil that down, one of the first questions people have when they load up a packet capture is, what the heck am I looking at?
Exactly. Yeah.
And, the Packet Doctors help solve that. The conference itself, Sharkfest, helps you solve that. And all the educational initiatives that we have kind of go towards answering that question. What am I looking at here? And then how do I drill down and find the issues that I'm looking for? And how do I, kind of hone my skills and do that effectively over time? Just one note about, when Chris was talking about, meeting the developers and our community, something that I kind of learned a long time ago and keep having to relearn over time is that being in the leadership role of this project, you have to set a tone. The tone I try to set is one that's inviting and, helping people to improve their skills and learn more about protocols and about Wireshark.
I love that. It's so important because I think it's intimidating, right? If I am new and then I meet you and I meet Chris, it's like, wow, okay. And I think it's fantastic that we're inviting the new generation, inviting new people in because we need people. The networks are just exploding. Cybersecurity is becoming a major issue everywhere. So, Gerald, I've got to ask you this question. I believe there's this kind of new product. I mean, I've known Wireshark for years, but there's something called Stratoshark or something. Well, what's that about?
I mentioned earlier that I work at a company called Sysdig. And if you know anything about Sysdig, we focus on cloud security, which doesn't really have anything to do with network packets. So there might be a question there, what the heck I'm doing. If you look at Wireshark, at the core of Wireshark is something called a dissection engine. And it just takes these blobs of bytes and breaks them down into their constituent fields. Wireshark is famous for breaking down these network packets, and that's its main use. But those blobs of bytes can be anything. And one of the things I'm working on at Sysdig is a companion or a sibling application to Wireshark called Stratoshark. And Stratoshark focuses on system calls. If you're not familiar with those, system calls are basically the thing in your operating system that lets programs do anything important and anything useful. So if you can tap into that system call layer, you know what all the applications on your system are doing. And Sysdig has developed a couple of other open source projects called Sysdig OSS and Falco that let you inspect and monitor system calls. And Stratoshark is it's a companion application to Wireshark. It's a desktop application, much like Wireshark, and it lets you load up all this syscall activity from Sysdig and from Falco, and you can inspect that and look at it. Not only system calls, but also log messages, for instance, from AWS CloudTrail or Google Cloud Audit Logs or Kubernetes Audit Logs and stuff like that. But I don't want to get down in the weeds here, but that's yeah.
How is it different to like other tools out there? I'm assuming one of the advantages is it's similar to Wireshark. So if I'm a Wireshark user, the interface will be similar. Is that one of the advantages, or like why would I use this rather than some other tool?
Yeah, that's exactly why we developed Stratoshark in the way that we did. It has the same user interface as Wireshark. It has the same workflows, the same filtering engine. So you can take these system call logs, system call captures and log captures from a tool like Falco, which works much like an IDS, but it looks at activity on your host, and pull those in, and you can do sort of deep forensic analysis, much like if you take a capture from a network IDS and pull it into Wireshark, you can do something similar there.
I love that. I mean, I think and I also think it's important for, like, let's say network people, like going back to the old days in the OSI model, we only focused on the lower layers, but I mean, you can't do that these days. So this gives me visibility as a network person into what's happening on the host as well, rather than just what's happening on the network. Is that fair to say? Yeah.
I mean, and that's exactly, what this is for. As you mentioned early on, years ago in networking, I remember in my first job, if I wanted to monitor the network, it was just on the single shared network segment, and I can just plug in and see everything going on. But we added switches, we added more and more segmentation as time went on, and in fact, we're segmented so much now that stuff's up in the cloud and we can't see those segments, and so we have to find new data sources and new sources of information to pull down and inspect, and Stratoshark is a step in that direction.
No, I love that. I think it's fantastic that I think like another advantage I just thought of is if I'm a network person, like the operating system might be a black box to me. So this allows me to feel comfortable learning about OS system calls and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
So Gerald, I'm assuming I'm not sure if you mentioned it, both Wireshark and Stratoshark are open sources and free. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
So I can just go to the Wireshark website, download either of these. Is that kind of how it works?
Well, Stratoshark has its own website, stratoshark.org. But you can pull down installers for Windows and Mac OS. Right now, if you want to capture, you have to do that on Linux, at least for system calls. So that's just one thing to keep aware of. So the workflow would be that you would capture on a Linux host and then pull those system calls, that system call capture down to Stratoshark on your local machine.
So Stratoshark can't run on Windows. Did I understand that right?
Well, no, it runs on Windows and on Mac OS. I mean, it's a full-on desktop application, just like Wireshark. It's just that if you want to capture system calls, you have to do it on a Linux machine.
Gerald, I believe there's some really exciting news with regards to certifications / proving to an employer that I actually know what I'm talking about with regards to Wireshark?
Yeah, that's correct. I say we, and I mean Chris and Ross Berger just did all the grunt work on this, but we in conjunction with the foundation are introducing something called the Wireshark Certified Analyst program, and it's a certification that shows you know about Wireshark, you know about networking protocols, and you know how to use them effectively.
So, Chris, you created this, I believe, with Ross, but I'm assuming it was with a whole team of people as well, right?
Yeah, so in partnership, Ross Bergertis, we mentioned that, like Gerald just mentioned. But in addition to that, we had a lot of help from the community. It wasn't just us. We had help with from the community with the objectives. We can link to that in the description down below to the Wireshark page where those are located. But also in the alpha testing, beta testing. So we were able to get individuals from all over the Wireshark community, everything from developers to advanced users to people in enterprise environments, to take the initial certification, get feedback from them, make adjustments to it, add, remove different topics. And what we have now is what we feel, and along with Gerald and the foundation team, we feel like we have a way to validate someone's skill set that they can then demonstrate to employers within their enterprise, show advancement with this skill. So we're all very, very excited about launching it.
I was going to say, on the foundation side, this is great. This is wonderful, just because the mission of the foundation is to help people make their networks fast, reliable, and secure. And having a certification program like Chris said that shows that you can use Wireshark effectively, that you know about these network protocols and about networking in general is a great thing. And the fact that you can demonstrate to potential employers.
Yeah, I mean, it's so difficult because, not everyone can create YouTube videos like Chris to demonstrate skills. So, I mean, if I don't want to be on camera, how do I prove that I actually know what I'm talking about? So I'm really glad that this is happening.
Yeah, no, I completely agree that now people have a way to demonstrate this is the skill set I have, and they can use it in all kinds of different things. And it's exciting to give them that pathway.
So, Chris, we've created a whole video where we went through this in a lot of detail, so I'll link that below. But one of the stories you were telling me, right, is someone in a big company, just correct me, tell me the story or tell everyone the story. They were like, okay, I'm going to mandate this kind of cert. Is something like that? Is that right?
Yeah, so one of our beta testers is from a larger corporation, and it's one that I had done training for. I'd given them a training course a few days on Wireshark, and we thought he'd be a good beta candidate, and he took it and it was very, very happy with the skills that it tested to. And his goal that he shared would be to have this as a part of job description, even as a definite recommendation to take. And our question to him was, okay, if someone walks in and is interviewing for a role and they're about to interview for it, and they had this there. So if they have CCNA, Net Plus, Sec Plus, and then, or if they are WCA certified, what now having taken it, what does this tell you? And his response was, man, they know their packet stuff. Like, it's not impossible expert level. We weren't going to the CCIE, even CCNP level. This is more of a CCNA follow-on, but it's a way to demonstrate that skill set with Wireshark. So again, very excited to see it out.
Prerequisites?
Prerequisites for this, you do need to go in with knowledge of networking in general. So think Net Plus, CCNA, you're going to hear me say that a lot. So it doesn't teach how a network in general works, or even switch functions, router functions, firewall functions, load balancers, application environments, cloud. It doesn't go into those technologies per se, but it does talk about the Wireshark Analyzer and also how core protocols work that support a lot of these different applications. So it tests you on, you can look at the objectives yourself. We can link that and people can download it, but ARP, IP, DHCP, DNS, TCP, UDP, just general core protocols that you'll be tested to in your knowledge. So it gives a good rounded protocol experience level.
Is it only for network people, or is, like, if I'm into cybersecurity, is it for me as well?
Yeah, I don't think so. It's just for, it is not specifically for network people only. It is a network certification However, if you're going into cybersecurity, you're even going into development, it's still a foundational level thing. We do have some goals going forward, and I think feedback from the community will help us as far as what a next step would be. Do we do more an advanced on the networking side, more advanced TCP type certification, or even like a security focused certification? But this is going to be your base level Wireshark cert that's very generic and adaptable to whatever silo you may be pursuing.
So, Chris, you told me a really cool story, right? And I think this is really applicable to people in cybersecurity or ethical hacking, because a lot of people who watch my videos you are interested in cyber. And tell us a story, because I think you know which one I'm alluding to, right?
About the gap in knowledge?
Yeah. So you were like at some big cybersecurity conference.
Oh, yeah.
You can tell us the story.
Yeah.
And someone really important like Gerald in that community mentioned something about like learning networking, I think it was.
Yeah, so I was doing a workshop for TCP. It was basically TCP analysis for hackers, and it was something that DEF CON, the community, accepted. I was really excited because I had no concept of what level are you going to teach to there? Like, What do people know? What do they don't know? What's the base level that we can then build on? And I went in and we were talking about just a basic handshake, and and I'd ask the audience, like, so who in here uses Nmap? And every hand goes up. And it was lined out the door. I mean, we packed it at 250 people in that room, standing room only in the back. And then I went outside and there was still a line down the hallway hoping for someone to leave. So, and then, I asked about Wireshark. So who uses Wireshark? Oh, every hand goes up. I'm like, who's ever captured Nmap with Wireshark and watched how a handshake actually works? Like, who knows what the actual packet difference between stealth scan and a connect scan? Who can explain that to me? How would you identify that at the packet level? Like, if I gave you a trace file, would you be able to find an Nmap scan? Would you be able to see it, and why? And that's where the hands started to drop, and people weren't really sure. And right at that time, I think the one you're referring to, we did have an awesome visit from Jeff Moss, who the original Dark Tangent, who started DEF CON. Dropped in, and again, my imposter syndrome went through the roof. But he was so cool about how he embraced having that content in DEF CON, because it is a knowledge gap to go from, okay, what are these protocols actually doing on the wire? It's one thing to, it's toolpalooza with cybersecurity. It's like there's so many tools, but what do the tools do, and how do they really work? And the tool that Gerald gave us and supported the community with Wireshark, it answers those questions. We can see on the wire how it works and what it's doing. So just helping to bridge the gap in that community of not just, an Nmap. Okay, so a port's open, but what does that mean? How did that work? How do we get that? An operating system fingerprinting with Nmap. I think for me, the first time I saw it at the packet level, I was totally fascinated. Like, how do you actually figure out the operating system based on the TCP stack? What does it actually do? How does it figure that out? So Wireshark helps us to answer those questions, but we just need to be able to understand and how to interpret that Wireshark user interface without getting overwhelmed. And that's what partnering with people like Gerald and the Wireshark Foundation, of course, is that's what our goal is, to bring that content and help more people get training and be comfortable with the analyzer.
I think I'm so glad you guys have done this, because it's a gap in the community. I think like that story at DEF CON is a good example of, like, if I was a cyber guy and I was applying for a job, how do I prove to whoever that I actually know how networks work, or understand, how to capture stuff. So I think it's great to see that this applies not just to networking people. I think it's an obvious cert for people who are into networking, but also for cyber, a great cert to prove that you actually understand networking rather than just being a script kiddie, as they say, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we think for the cyber community, I mean, there's CTFs, there's things that they do with Wireshark. I get those questions on my channel too, David. How do I extract this file and look for this or that, or how do I how do I find this word in this packet capture? And you can tell it's probably for somebody's homework or some CTF, but like real world, like Wireshark has a heavy presence in that community. And man, like think about an IDS IPS, like a lot of these tools use packets to be able to do what they're doing. They're just doing it faster. Back to Wireshark, the stronger our skill set there, the better we can actually understand how to interpret these tools and know what matters, what's breaking, what should raise our little awareness, and what is normal.
So a big question, right? Okay, so I can get the blueprint, I can get the objectives, et cetera, but how do I study for this? I'm hoping someone like you, Chris, is creating training.
Yeah, 100%. So I have a full comprehensive training course that it's an on-demand course. You can buy it and watch it. It has labs. It's got quizzes. It's got built-in stuff like that. So that'll give you more the overall conceptual training. Additionally, and you'll see on that Wireshark page, there's going to be as people come on board with other training, there's going to be labs that are going to be available and additional like tests or practice tests. As those come on and become available, then we'll add to those links add to the links on the page for the different training options. So, so that'll be up and going soon.
That's great. I think it's something really necessary. Because, I come from a Cisco background, so CCNA is well regarded in the world as like, get this cert if you want to prove that you know the basics of networking. And we haven't had something, I feel like, for Wireshark. So fantastic that this is happening. Any other comments about the cert from either of you? Sorry, go on.
On the foundation side, like I said, we try to ensure that people have the resources that they need to use Wireshark more effectively, and Sharkfest is a part of that, but the certification is going to be a big part of that, I think. And as you mentioned, people can use the cert to demonstrate that they know Wireshark and they know networking. But on the other hand, if you're a hiring manager, this is a good way for you to find people who do know networking and be assured that they can do the job that you're looking.
And one of the goals in time also with Sharkfest is to begin to align more of the content offered there to the WCA objectives. So David, you could come to Sharkfest, sit a pre-conference course, go through a whole track that's WCA focused. And our goal would be to give you everything you need so that following that experience, you would be well on your way to passing the certification. So that's going to be one of the goals we have. Another goal we have is working in collaboration with Pearson, who hosts the CCNA, is to get more cross traffic with the CCNA. That's a goal. We're hoping that we can get more attention over there. But after you take a CCNA, now what? This would be a nice follow on.
So, guys, anything else you want to tell us about, like the cert or the products or anything you want to like wrap up with?
David, if I may, I'd like to take an opportunity to thank Gerald. Is that all right?
Yeah, of course. Go for it, man.
I think about all the content we've done. That you have helped me get more visibility with this whole the Wireshark and TCP audience. But really, all of that wouldn't have happened without a very generous and sharing, selfless individual, and that is Gerald Combs. I mean, Gerald's been a friend of mine. It's crazy to say that he's been a friend of mine now for well over a decade, and someone that's been very supportive of my content and letting me take a place where I get to be an educator on this topic. And he's been nothing but supportive and helpful. And so it drives me, because not only is it an amazing product doing an amazing thing, but it has this amazing guy behind it. So Gerald, thank you. And thank you for your contribution to the community. Thank you for letting creators like myself and David Bombal do what we do with this product and get this message out. And your generosity to the community helps us to, continue what we love doing, and that's creating good content for the people. So, thanks, Gerald. You've been a fantastic partner.
Wow, thanks for the kind words, Chris. I was expecting that. But I will say I do love working with the Wireshark community. It's the thing that gets me up in the morning and ready to face the day. I never had imagined my career would turn out like this, and I love what I do for a living. So thank you all.
I love it. I mean, and I think it's an inspiration for everyone, right? If you have a problem and you can create something to solve your problem, then do that, because you could be creating the next Wireshark. So guys, thanks so much. Gerald, thanks so much for making the time. Thanks so much for creating this product. I'm with Chris on this. Thanks for allowing creators like us to create courses and products and like teach people on YouTube and all the rest of it. Really thank you for, making the community and making it open source and, welcoming new people to the community. Chris, as always, thanks. It's great to have you back on the show. So thanks so much, guys.
Thanks, David.
Thank you. Great to be here.